Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us for March's Talk and Talent. I haven't done one of these for about 4 months now, so please forgive me if I stumble and stutter and I've forgotten my way, but I've got a really good guest on today that will keep me right. So Talk and Talent is all about bringing together contact centre leaders, whether from an operational perspective or from an HR and recruitment perspective, just to talk about topics of the day and also talk about people's careers, their challenges and what they're up to in the industry at the moment. So welcome and thank you everyone for joining us. Today, like I say, I've got somebody that will keep me right. He's well known in the BPO industry, in the contact centre industry. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's had over 30 years of experience in the BPO and customer experience arena. He's built and delivered scalable solutions on behalf of major brands, and his entrepreneurial and leadership skills have allowed him to create specialist teams that are focused on results. In the last 10 years, John, my guest, has created and developed a highly respectable global BPO business that specialises in the retail industry predominantly, with brands such as John Lewis, Selfridges, Aldi, Wickes and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And prior to forming that, he was the commercial and operations director at beCogent, and that was acquired by Teleperformance. So he doesn't need much more introduction than that. Welcome, John, CEO and founder of Ascensos.
Thanks, Julie. I'm quite rusty at this as well, actually, so we'll both keep each other right if that's okay. But looking forward to the next 45 minutes.
Great. Well, today we wanted to talk about your career, what has made the man you are, what skills you've built along the way, your challenges and your successes, I guess. So do you want to start by telling us a little bit about your early career and how you got into the contact centre industry?
Yeah, of course. Like many people, I got into contact centre industry, not by design, but by default. I don't think there's many people who really start off with a view of an aspiration of working in contact centres, and maybe we'll expand a little bit on that later, about what we can do within the industry to perhaps change that. But yeah, my early career, I was in electronic engineering, which was when I was leaving school and got into university. That was a big industry in central Scotland. You know, a lot of big US electronics businesses had manufacturing and design operations in central Scotland, and it was a career of choice at that time. So I get involved in electronic engineering. That took me into account development for some of the clients that we had, and into business development. And by chance, I worked with Motorola, and we outsourced some of our after sales customer care to a Scottish outsourced business at that time, and I built up a good relationship with them. Their chief exec then left and formed beCogent, and he came and hired me. I was working in the States at the time, around about 9/11 when that happened, and after 9/11 I came back home to Scotland, and I started working with beCogent at that time. I didn't have any long-term plans to work in BPO or work in contact centres, but I loved it. Instantly fell in love with it. I found it to be a really rewarding business to work within. It was really challenging, really fast-paced, lots to do, many different clients to look after and develop. And it was a great fit for me and for beCogent at the time, and we never really looked back, both personally or professionally.
Fantastic. And I guess that clear line of sight to you being an end customer within B2B sort of shaped your decision to move into the industry. So how's your career developed since then, and what's your current role? I mean, it's a very big job, CEO, co-founder. Tell me a little bit about what that entails.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the introduction, beCogent was acquired by Teleperformance in 2010, and after a period of 18 months or so at Teleperformance, I chose to leave and decided that we would start, a startup business, that would be a competitor in the BPO space. We felt there was unfinished business after being acquired by Teleperformance, and there was room in the market for an independent, high quality, authentic, owner-managed BPO player. There was a lot of consolidation at that time. A lot of the smaller BPOs were being acquired by the very large global BPOs. And I felt there was room in the market for somebody that was focused on high quality, focused on leading with example, and a purpose, principle-led business. So we put the business plan together for Ascensos, and in 2013 got started. Obviously, that was a big commitment. We set out to be a large business, or a medium to large business, from day one. We didn't start with 10-seat contact centre or 50-seat contact centre. We opened our first centre in Motherwell near Glasgow with 400 seats, and at that time with no employees, no clients, no business. So it was a huge risk take.
Very bold.
It was ambitious at the time, but we're a very entrepreneurial-led business, and we remain that way. And we knew that we had a good reputation in the market. Personally, I had a very strong reputation in the retail and consumer market. beCogent had a great track record, so we could leverage from the reputation that we had. But you still had to go out there and walk the talk and press the flesh and chap on doors and win the new business, which for me, I love that part of what I do. I love business development. I love the kind of cut and thrust of that. I love the competition. I love being the challenger brand in the marketplace, and taking on the big boys, being the David versus Goliath. That's always inspired me personally, and I still love that part of what we do. But obviously my role has developed into the chief exec role, and as such, I set the strategy and the leadership cadence and tempo for the business. And I guess as a chief exec and a leader in the business, you have to be a great talent spotter. That's what most of my job contains, is hiring and developing a great team within Ascensos. So talent spotting is absolutely crucial. Knowing who is going to be ready and right for our environment and for the culture that we have within the business. So that's hugely important, and making difficult decisions. That's what I spend my day doing, really, is making difficult decisions. Decisions that come with experience. And you get a lot of those decisions right. I'd like to think we get a lot of those decisions right, but equally, you learn from bad decisions as well, don't you?
Yeah, and hopefully we'll come on to a few of those later on, talking about your good and your bad decisions and what you might change. But to get to where you are now, who's inspired your career, John? Where did you get that entrepreneurial spirit from?
I don't think it's a natural born thing. I don't think it was in me. I think I've developed that side of my leadership style, Julie. I don't think there will be natural born entrepreneurs out there. I think who it's in their DNA. That certainly wasn't me. I'm far more of a historically, being a part of a team, and working within that. But when you start a new business, then you have to kind of take on that entrepreneurial mantle and that leadership. Various leaders I've worked with during my career have all inspired me in different ways. They've not all been in the BPO or the contact centre sector. I once worked with a guy, Ian McGregor, a number of years ago. Unfortunately, Ian died very young, from cancer. He was only 51, but he was a great leader, and he believed in me as a young pup in his organisation. He believed in me, and he seen something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself at that time. So I'll always reflect on the confidence and the trust that he placed in me. So guys like that can be inspirational and a real catalyst in you. But I'm not inspired by, business leaders really, in the way that people say, oh, Elon Musk or all that kind of stuff. I'm just not like that. I'm inspired more by musicians and leaders in sport. So I take a lot of my man management style from great managers of football teams, and people who I think get the best out of their teams, despite the fact that maybe they didn't have the biggest budgets, or maybe they didn't have the biggest stars within their team, but they still get the best out of a team through great people management and great leadership skills.
And it's a great mantra that you have around you being a talent spotter, because you've just identified there that he saw talents in you and enabled you to give you the space and the confidence to grow and pull that out of you, I guess. So you won in 2021, you won EY's Entrepreneur of the Year award. Tell us a little bit about that. What did that involve? It's quite
amazingly so. Yeah, I still think how come, so I don't quite understand the process EY get into approaching any individual, as a potential Entrepreneur of the Year candidate, but they did, they must have a team who do this, behind the scenes, and they approached me to go forward through the various steps in the process that entails and that involves. At no stage did I think, there was any possibility that I would be of interest to them, really, and I didn't really have that, and again, in my character. I looked at some of the previous winners and thought, I don't resemble them at all. I don't have the same characteristics of them at all. But yeah, I went through each stage in the process and got further into the process and started to think, well, I'm now down to the kind of short list, and been through all the kind of one-to-one interviews and personal interviews that we had to do with the EY at that time. It was quite an intense and intrusive process, actually. You have to give up a lot of your own time and share a lot of personal information with them, as well as professional information with them, about your leadership style and who you are as a human, which was, again, quite cathartic to do that. The unfortunate thing with the whole process was it was in 2021, and it was bang in the middle of COVID, so it was all done online and all done virtually, and we never really get the chance to meet in the way that maybe previous EY Entrepreneurs of the Year had met as a collective. It was all done remotely. And even the eventual award ceremony wasn't done in the room, wasn't done in person. So I do feel as if I missed out on a little bit there, because beforehand and later, like any award ceremonies during COVID, they didn't quite have the same kudos and the same attachment to them as maybe an award ceremony in the room would be, and you didn't really get the chance to meet with your fellow candidates and fellow Entrepreneur of the Year finalists either. So it was a great accolade for me and for the business, because a lot of it was based on what I had achieved within Ascensos, obviously. But I still don't really know why they choose their winners and the kind of losers in this kind of process. It's the same with, if you get into any of the awards at Ascensos Centre, and we win a lot of awards in the marketplace, I'm never sure why we win and others don't, or why we lose and others win. I think it's very random sometimes.
All right, great. Well, that is a fantastic achievement, but what would you say your proudest one is throughout your career?
Definitely, what we've developed Ascensos into. If I look at the business plan for Ascensos in 2012, and we were kind of locked ourselves away in a room, there's only 4 of us putting that together. It bears no resemblance to what Ascensos looks like today. With no real view or aspiration of Ascensos having a kind of global footprint that we have today. That's happened out of necessity more than it was down to our business plan that we've had to pivot towards being a global business. But how we've managed to do that, scale up in various regions around the world, as well as grow our business with 25 different clients that we support now, 3,000 colleagues, but importantly maintain the secret sauce, the USP of what Ascensos represents, and the kind of purpose and principles that Ascensos represents. That's obviously what I'm most proud of, that we've not really sold out. And a
Yeah.
lot of businesses do, but we've retained, really who we are deep within our DNA, and we've been able to replicate that culture, that DNA, now across 5 different countries.
And I know when I first met you, when we came up to Scotland and came into Ascensos, and you had a chief happiness or happyologist.
Chief happyologist, yeah.
And the culture is very much one of that, and the spark that you've got is very evident in your people.
Yeah, we still have a chief happyologist, Yvonne Hart. Yvonne's off on maternity leave at the moment, so we're a little bit less happy than we normally would be. I don't know if that comes across, but hopefully the rest of the team are carrying on her good work. But it is a unique role. We created that role again during COVID because we wanted, our remote teams to still have the same energy and the same attachment and engagement with the Ascensos brand as we had when we were all in the office. And Yvonne's role as chief happyologist was kind of central to that success.
And I guess that's even more important when you're expanding into other markets and other countries as well, where you continue to have those remote teams.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I had to explain, if you go into Romania, for instance, what a chief happyologist does, because if it was alien in our world, it was very alien in their world, so I had to explain. And Yvonne, is from Liverpool. She's a proper Scouser, and she's got a great energy and a great enthusiasm for all things in life. But in different cultures and different countries, you have to work a little bit differently about how that role and that energy translates across.
Yeah. So obviously the evolution of the business over the last 10 years has been phenomenal. But what would you say about the evolution of customer service and outsourcing in particular in the last 25 years? How has that changed?
Well, it's changed a lot in some areas and not changed a lot in others. If you go back to our days at beCogent, if I go back to probably about 20 years, we were talking about the death of contact centres then, through speech analytics, through voice recognition, etc. There was quite a lot of investment in those tools at that time, as well as lots of online tools supporting online transactions, for through websites, web chat, etc. And it was in its infancy at that time, but there was a lot of talk about the death of the bricks and mortar contact centre at that time. Equally, there was a lot of migration of UK activity to offshore to India, and there was a view that the UK contact centre industry was dying, and it would either move to automation or move offshore. And here we are, 20 years later, and we're still having the same conversation, aren't we? About the rise of robots, AI, and all things associated with it, and offshore. It's the 2 big conversation pieces that we still have within our industry: is how is automation going to replace human activity, and how is offshore going to replace UK activity? And there's still very pertinent conversations and arguments to have around about both of those areas. So there's a lot changed in that time. If you look at technology, it has changed a lot, from being premise-based technology to being in the cloud, mostly in CCaaS solution support in our industry, has been the norm nowadays. And, Ascensos is one of the first startups that invested entirely into CCaaS and cloud technology 11 years ago. But that's now becoming preeminent across our whole sector. And obviously a lot of transactions now being done through social channels, through social media as well. Digital transformation, again, another great leap forward in terms of moving from voice into omni-channel across all other digital channels in the industry too. And we've been at the forefront of that. So that is ongoing, and that is moving at pace and continues moving at pace. But I still think there is a need for human-to-human contact.
Yeah.
More than ever, a need for human-to-human contact in terms of real engagement, in terms of real trust development, brand advocacy, and going forward into managing more complex type inquiries and delivering more complex solutions on behalf of customers. So I think the argument still remains about offshore, onshore, and the argument still remains about human versus automation. But definitely, we've seen a change in terms of channel shift over the past 20 years. I go back that we're probably 80% voice, 20% non-voice 10, 15 years ago. And in Ascensos today, we'll be 60% non-voice and 40% voice. It's changed quite significantly over that period.
Yeah. And you talked about the offshore, and obviously we've gone through quite a cycle with that of a lot of businesses offshoring, bringing it back onshore, and now there's a trend into offshoring in South Africa, which you've done significantly over the last, how long is it, the last couple of years or so?
2 years, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, about the reasons for that, and also any challenges you found?
Yeah, of course. So we've grown very quickly in South Africa. We have, in the space of 2 years, we went from 0 to 1,200 jobs in Cape Town. So we've got 2 sites in Cape Town now. The reason for that originally was that going back into the middle of the pandemic, there was a real challenge in terms of recruitment and retention in the UK. I hate using the term, it's a very American term, the Great Resignation, but we all know what that refers to. And it was a real feature of our sector in the UK 3 years ago, that it was difficult to retain and recruit good talent. And all of the industry was affected by that. That wasn't localised to Scotland or localised to the southeast, or it wasn't a BPO versus an in-house captive contact centre situation, and it didn't relate to Ascensos and not relate to some of the other BPO providers. Everyone was affected by it. So I had to go out and find a very rapid solution, that allowed us to scale up English language capability, good quality, scalable solutions, and do it very quickly, because we've got a seasonality to our business, because we support the retail and consumer sector in particular. That we've got a seasonality to in our business that kind of ratchets up very quickly from September of each year into the kind of golden quarter leading into Christmas. And in the summer of that year, we were having difficulty recruiting and retaining colleagues in the UK. So we found a very like-minded partner in South Africa, a kind of new start South African digital BPO called Digital Tribe, that we built a relationship with very quickly. We acquired an initial stake in their business. We launched within 9 weeks of having an initial conversation, and that was without even having be able to set foot in the ground in Cape Town because of the COVID restrictions at the time. We weren't able to travel out there, and we had live operations up and running for our clients within 10 or 12 weeks. We eventually acquired that business in its entirety, and have grown that very quickly now to 1,200 roles in Cape Town, supporting 14 different clients. And we both have clients that we had in the UK have migrated some of their volume now out to Cape Town, and then we've won new brands to partner with that went straight into Cape Town. As part of new wins. You mentioned John Lewis earlier. We won a chunk of that John Lewis work when it went out into the market last year, and we placed some of that work directly into Cape Town on behalf of John Lewis too. So it's went really well for us. And we've learnt a lot in that process. I've probably spent half of my life in Cape Town over the past year or 18 months. And we've got a great leadership team out there, a local leadership team based in Cape Town, and we've supplemented that with some experienced Ascensos guys from the UK as well. So a great combination of local leadership based in Cape Town, South African nationals who lead their business out there, but propped up with some Ascensos UK guys who understand our clients and understand the UK market as well.
And do you see any difference between your key metrics from your colleagues over in South Africa on the delivery to the clients? Is there what are the what's it like recruiting over there? What have your challenges and your successes been?
Yeah, we did find that at first, being brutally honest, the first client experience we had out there, we learned a lot from, and we had to learn a lot about making sure that our colleagues in South Africa are fully immersed in UK brands that they might not recognise. We've got UK brands out there that we're delivering from South Africa that don't have a brand presence in South Africa itself. So we've spent a lot more time ensuring that our colleagues in South Africa are fully immersed and fully educated on what that brand represents. What the brand values are, how their stores operate in UK, how their online proposition operates in the UK market or across the different markets that we serve out of South Africa. So we had to spend a lot more time in investing in colleague training and development than you would have done necessarily for a UK based colleague. An example of that would be Aldi. We support Aldi supermarkets, and we've got a team in the UK and a team in South Africa supporting Aldi. Aldi don't have a presence in South Africa, and there's some nuances about Aldi that we all know about. The middle aisle in Aldi is very unique to Aldi and maybe to their other German supermarket competitor, Lidl. It's a very, very unique proposition, that middle aisle, and when it's gone, all that kind of stuff, and the product turnover for that middle aisle. They don't have that in South Africa, and we had to then educate our South African advisors on the significance and the importance of what those middle aisle products mean to Aldi, and what the customer expectation UK is around about the availability of some of that product, because once it's gone out of stock, that's it gone until it's replenished at a later date in the year maybe. So there's quite a lot of nuances around about that we had to focus in to make sure that our colleagues fully understand how that brand operates and how that business operates. And we've done some things like virtual video training of a walkthrough of an Aldi store, so they could understand how an Aldi store is laid out and what the customer journey is walking through an Aldi store. Because again, they couldn't all come across to the UK to do that, so we had to take the UK experience out to Cape Town.
Did you reenact the checkouts at Aldi?
I knew you were going to ask about checkouts. Well, again, that's a very unique thing to Aldi and to the German supermarkets is the pace in which you've moved through the checkout experience. And again, yes, we had to ensure that our advisors were aware of the peculiarities around about the Aldi checkout process. And some of the issues that then generates, about customers maybe leaving something behind, or customers maybe leaving some feedback about the checkout process itself, and it could be different from how a South African colleague shops in their local supermarket, and the checkout experience within a German supermarket is different.
Yeah. Great.
I'm being very, very politically correct about how I answer that question, because the Aldi checkout process is unique compared to other supermarkets, obviously.
I've got it off to a T. I can do it. I can beat the checkout person. So it's my big win. So we've talked a lot about the business and the person behind the brand, but you've also been involved in a lot of stuff outside of your role. You're currently non-exec director of Spirit Aid. It's a humanitarian relief organisation dedicated to alleviating the suffering of children and young people whose lives have been devastated by war, poverty, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and all forms of abuse. I had to read that out because it's so powerful and I didn't want to get it wrong. So tell me a little bit about that and how you got involved.
Well, the first thing is I'm no longer involved.
All right, okay.
So it's a little bit out of date, but I was involved in it. Yeah, I get involved in that through. I was also at the time involved in football. I was on a board and then became a chairman of a lower league football club in Scotland, and one of the other directors, was involved with the charity with Spirit Aid. And I got involved through his association too, and yeah, their role was to both look at child poverty in Scotland and Glasgow in particular, but also in other areas of the world that were affected by child poverty, mostly driven by wars in those locations, and mostly in the Middle East. And at the time, it was in Syria, and some of the terrible situations that children faced in Syria and the Middle East. But equally, there are children closer to home in Glasgow and Scotland who are affected by very poor living conditions and very severe poverty and malnutrition as well. So, yeah, Spirit Aid was a charity is a charity that raises money for humanitarian causes, but mostly focused on supporting children who are affected by deprivation, by poverty, and by war in their own areas.
And how did you find the time to do that? And the connection you've got with football. You're very busy. You're off across the world, frequent flyer. So how do you get time to get involved in the charitable work that you do?
Well, that's the reason unfortunately, I'm no longer involved. Because it was becoming more and more difficult to honour the obligations you've got. When you're in that kind of environment. And you're right. Once our business moved into being more of a global business rather than being UK centric, then I was spending less and less time in the UK. And unable really, to personally, for me to feel as if I was meeting my obligations as a director or as a non-exec, to those areas. So yeah, you kind of have to balance that. Anyone who does any work in the charity sector, the not-for-profit sector either, they need to be careful that you can still make a difference, make an impact, and you're not just kind of continuing on, even though you can't really add any value to it any longer. And that's fine. I think there's always a cycle of people involved in charities like Spirit Aid. So I think it's fine that you do realise that you have to kind of move on after a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of attracting future talent to the contact centre industry, we all know it's tainted with a poor perception often from those that don't work in the industry, but those in the industry have fantastic careers if that's what the path they want to take. What do you think we all need to be doing to raising the profile of work, and not just in the contact centre, but particularly in the BPO space?
It's a great question. It's probably the $6 million question as well, isn't it? That how can we make our industry attractive enough that school kids actually aspire to work in BPO or in contact centres or in customer care? Because if we're honest with ourselves, they don't, do they? I just don't imagine that conversation ever happens. That at school, at career conversations, that there's ever a discussion between a school pupil and their career advisors or their teachers, about I want to go and work in contact centres. People find themselves working in contact centres and then develop a career from within, much like many of us did as well. None of us, as I said earlier, really set out to work in this industry, but once you're in it, you can understand the opportunities, the different roles, the career progression that it can stimulate. So I think we need to tell our story better. We need to tell our success stories better of those of us who have delivered a really successful career within this industry, and be able to articulate that and be able to reflect that story better into universities, colleges, but down into schools as well. Spend more time, with those establishments about how we take their message out to them. And I think we have to talk about career opportunities within our industry, that it isn't always, about the typical stereotypical image you've got of someone sitting with a headset behind a PC, because that's always the image that the media portray of contact centres. There are many more interesting roles developing now in social media, in creative capabilities, and then in project management, in business development, in business management roles, IT, digital transformation, insights analytics, all of that, there's many careers within Ascensos that aren't your typical operational careers, from advisor to team manager to ops director. Those roles still exist, but there are many other evolving roles now within our business and within our sector that could be really attractive to the market. I mean, we bring in students every year from Strathclyde University, who don't come in to work on in frontline operations. They come into data analytics, into digital transformation roles, into project management roles, into HR or finance roles within our business. So there are many other careers that we should be really extolling the virtues of, not just the frontline contact centre jobs that are still very important, but may be one of the reasons people see it as being a bit of a dead-end job, and they don't see the other opportunities that do exist. And one of those in particular, I think, is massively undervalued and undersold is in sales and business development. We all sell all the time. In BPO, you have to be selling all the time. It's everyone works in business development within Ascensos. You have to have that within your DNA. You have to have that within your ambition, that we're always trying to develop our business and develop the business of our clients too. Yet it's typically frowned upon, isn't it, to say you work in sales? It's almost toxic to say you work in sales, and we find lots of other job titles for it to try and take the edge off it and make it not sound as if you work in sales. But you work in sales. I mean, the very fact that you're here doing this through LinkedIn is to try and promote Green Bean, try and promote your brand.
Yeah.
I work in sales. That's the primary role I do, is to develop Ascensos, as a growing business, and that means winning new business all the time and constantly kind of feeding the engine, of the lifeblood of the business is new sales coming through. Yeah, I still think we treat it a bit with contempt, and the guys that are good at selling in our industry, and we all know them. There's very few of them, and they move around the industry between BPO to BPO, and there's not a lot of young blood coming through into business development sales roles. And I think we really need to encourage that and stop treating it like it's a bad word and something that should be held in contempt. I think sales guys are massively important in any walk of life, and even going back to schools. I was having a conversation with the school that my daughter goes to. They should teach sales practice at schools. It should teach you how to do a sales presentation. It should teach you how to negotiate at schools, teach you how to manage relationships at schools. Surely that's more important than teaching you chemistry and biology. You can learn all of that from the internet nowadays. You still can't learn how to do a world-class sales pitch off the internet. Well, I don't think you can anyway. You might get some people out there say this is a template for a world-class sales pitch, but every sales pitch in my mind has to be bespoke and boutique and unique to that environment. And no one is teaching kids to do that either at school, college, or university.
No, I totally agree. And virtually every role within business has a sales element or stakeholder engagement element. I mean, my role in partnerships and marketing, it's all about creating demand with marketing, which is driving sales. So you're absolutely right there that we should be out talking to schools and colleges about the transferable skills that are needed, that can take you into sales, that can take you into all of the different routes in contact centre. It's a really, really good point there, John. Excellent. So I know we're running out of time, but a couple of quick questions for anybody aspiring to have a career like yours, or wanting to know how they can build their resilience, or just embed their learning and grow. Is there anything that you read or any podcasts you listen to that you would recommend that's worthwhile anybody listening to or reading?
Wow.
Other than the internet?
Again, I'm not one of these people who read management development books or self help guides, etc. You know, I've just never really been inspired by that. I do listen to the podcast, you know, so I listen to industry podcasts for us, like I like the CX Files, you know, which is Mark Hillary and Peter Ryan, the kind of thing that they do. I like Punk CX, you know, which is Adrian Swinscoe and his podcast that he manages. I'd have to mention, I like Martin Teasdale's Get a Rap. I love Martin. Martin and I are good mates, and you know, we are very much part of his community. And I think of any aspiring up and coming managers within contact centres, you know, getting involved with Martin's team leader community, because you know, there's some real practical nuggets that you can learn from Martin, and we've got a lot of our first line managers and aspiring managers who are all part of that community, and they all love being in and around that. So yeah, I like those industry podcasts, but I listen to more football podcasts, Julie, than I do industry ones, to be fair. You know, if I'm very passionate about our industry, but I'm actually more passionate about football.
And what team do you support?
Oh, I'm a Glasgow Celtic fan. Of course.
I know when we came up to Scotland, I came up with Leanne, our MD, who her husband's a Celtic supporter, and we had to stop off at the Celtic shop to get ties for them they were going for corporate hospitality or something, and our young son had to have a Celtic tie. So yeah, it's very.
The one thing I would say about any aspiring manager is understand your value, and I don't mean by that what the price tag on the job title is, because you know that's not value. I would you know recommend everyone to understand the value that you bring to the organisation. You know, not the job title price tag. You know, so if you're an ops manager, there'll be in your business there'll be a price tag on that ops manager job title, but think about the value you bring to the organisation, you know, and don't underestimate your value, you know, in terms of your career progression. You know, I think that's probably the most important thing you can do is understand the value that you bring, and try and break away from the price tag that job titles have, you know, and think more about who you are and what you can bring to an organisation rather than what the kind of defined job title and job role is.
That's great advice. Thank you, John. I could talk to you all day, but we're on time now. So I just want a huge thank you from myself and all of the Green Bean team for joining us today. Looking forward to following it up. I'll write a piece of content around some of your thoughts that you've shared there. So thanks very much for taking time out. I know you're travelling off to London and then you're back to South Africa next week. So very, very busy man indeed. So really grateful. And for
thanks, Julie. Thank you.
We've got our next Talk and Talent Live is in May, where I'll be chatting to the CEO of a business called Lendable, Chris Bosworth. So if you want to mark that in your diaries, there'll be further information coming out on LinkedIn about that soon. But for now, that's all from us. Thank you so much, John, and I'll see you again soon. Safe travels.